I started teaching anti-aging, I really didn't decide to teach it. It just kind of decided me, and I went with the flow. So there I was, happily teaching Yes to Success since 1980. And I've been a meditation teacher since 1972. In a couple months, it'll be my 50th anniversary since I started teaching meditation. But whenever I would mention to people that I was about to turn 70, which I actually did in January, I would literally get inundated with questions, with emails asking, what was my secret? To having ageless radiance. And, this sounds like I'm talking about myself, but, like almost no gray hair, very few wrinkles. This is really me. This is not, a facelift. And I have nothing against facelifts. Trust me, if I needed one, I'd go right to the plastic surgeon and I would get one. But, no Botox, because anything with the word tox in it really kind of scares me. But, or speaking on the stage for hours with no notes. People say, how do you do it? So instead of continuing to spend my life answering those emails, I put together this 90-minute webinar that I called Ageless, and I gave people a few tips, but people wanted more. So I contacted a dear friend of mine. Her name is Ronnie Newman, and we went to college together in the early 1970s. We went to Washington University in St. Louis. She went on to she went to Harvard, and she became a mind-body researcher specializing in anti-aging of the brain and the body. In fact, she was part of the team in the 80s and 90s that did the research at Harvard that appeared on the cover of Newsweek. It was a big phenomenon. It was, have we discovered the fountain of youth? That was her research. And I said to her, Ronnie, why don't you and I put together a course to teach people how to have radiant health and happiness and a clear mind and a strong libido and all these things that people want into their 50s and 60s and 70s like ourselves. And now we ended up teaching that course to thousands of people around the world.
Yeah, it's so beautiful and so powerful. And I can definitely see why people were asking you your secrets, Debra.
Thank you.
And I'm sure our audience can see that too. And I do think, this whole process of aging is something that is very much top of mind for so many people in our age category. I shared with you that I'm about a year away from turning 60. And so I think it's not just, looking good and feeling good about our appearance, although that certainly is a part of it. But I also think there's a lot of health reasons that we really want to be focused on this. My own mother passed away from Alzheimer's. So I know the significance of what that means and the painful decline that I saw in her. And so these kinds of things are very much top of mind in my life. And I know that's relevant for so many people in our audience too.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm going to touch on that. I want to touch on Alzheimer's, but see, a lot of people say to me, well, how is it that you appear to not be aging? And I say, no, it's not just an appearance. It actually is cellular, but it's your choice. Chronological aging is a given. One day we're 50 and the next day we're 51, or in my case, the next day I'm 70. But physiological aging is all about lifestyle choices. And you don't have to take my word for it, since there's overwhelming scientific evidence that, for example, when you eat certain foods like high glycemic foods or foods that are, primarily like refined carbohydrates or sugars or processed meats with nitrates, that they're going to generate what's called free radicals. And free radicals age our cells. I mean, that's not just a psychological thing, it's a physiological thing. And maybe I better explain what a free radical is for people who don't know, but sure. What it is, it's an atom that's missing an electron. And so what happens is that, for example, when you cut an apple or you cut an avocado and it turns brown, why does that happen? Well, it's called oxidation or oxidative stress. What happens is that you've cut an electron off of the electron pairs. Electrons come in pairs. And then that electron goes around searching for a pair to make it whole. And what happens is that when it steals those electrons, then the apple or the avocado or your skin oxidizes. Rust is oxidation. All right. So, and by the way, one of the worst causes of free radical damage is the sun. So oxidative stress, for example, from the sun weakens the cells. And not only does it age your skin, but it could leave you more vulnerable to certain health issues. In fact, free radicals have been implicated in, cancer and heart disease and Parkinson's, even Alzheimer's. And there are a lot of causes of free radical damage beside the sun. Believe it or not, over-exercising generates free radicals. And then the obvious things like air pollution and smoking and excessive alcohol consumption. If we don't get enough antioxidants to counteract oxidation, we not only visibly age more quickly, like the skin ages on our face, but our whole body ages and we're more susceptible to disease. So you want to eat foods that count. It's kind of if you squeeze a lemon on an apple, then it won't turn brown because that's an antioxidant. So what you want to eat are foods that are antioxidants: blueberries, cranberries, red kidney beans, pinto beans, most apples, especially Granny Smith and Kayla, prunes. There are so many things that are antioxidants. But another way we age is when we sit around with our friends and one says, "Oh, wait until you get cataracts." Now that image is in your mind. Okay. The next friend, right? The next friend is, "Oh, and your knees are going to go." Those people. You said, right. I just want to get up and leave. Like, maybe your knees are going to go, but mine aren't.
Right, right.
Right? Because now that image is your mind. And then they're like, "Is your hair falling out like mine is?" And what happens is that you get these pictures in your mind, and we all know the power of our minds. I want to tell you, can I tell you the story of a woman who did research on this at Harvard, another Harvard?
I would love to hear that because I'm such a big believer in the power of our minds. I think we're literally creating with our thoughts and with our words.
Absolutely. I'm telling you, when people say those things like, "Oh, wait until your eyes," I think, well, my eyes aren't gonna actually. And they're not. And when people, "Oh, I always get sick," I go, "Oh, really? I never get sick." And if I do, I know what to do in order to get, but the truth is that our minds do create our reality. So let me just tell you this one, there was a woman at Harvard, actually also part of this research team that did the research on anti-aging, who my business partner, Ronnie Newman, was on this team. So her name is Dr. Ellen Langer. And what she did is she invited a group of 10 men who were like in their 60s or 70s. I can't remember exactly how old they were, but I think maybe in their 70s, to a retreat. And these are men who had aches and pains and back pain and felt like they were losing their memory and this and that. And all of the typical things that people expect to happen when you're in your 60s or 70s. Right. So they get to this facility and they open the door of this facility. It was only them, only these 10 guys. And everything in the facility had been transformed to what it looked like when they were in their 30s. There were televisions that looked like in clock radios, and there were posters up that said, like, "I like Ike," or
"I like Ike,"
right? Or the Sox had won the World Series, and even the TV shows were like "Leave It to Beaver," and there were no, and they weren't allowed to have anybody else carry their bags, and they weren't allowed to talk about any of their aches and pains, and and there were no mirrors. They covered all of the mirrors so they couldn't see how they looked. And the amazing thing was, after the week was up, Their physical strength came back, their vitality came back. They were able to do physical tasks that they couldn't do before. Their memories improved. They started feeling like they felt in their 30s. So I thought that was one of my favorite pieces of research, and it's in your control through proper diet, the right kind of exercise, rejuvenating sleep, again, a mindset that doesn't believe that you're falling apart when you turn 50 or 60, getting stress under control, avoiding toxins. And I'm happy to share tips and all of those categories. I was going to jump into Alzheimer's, but you asked the next question.
Yeah, well, I mean, since you brought that up, I think that's fine to jump into Alzheimer's. I do think keeping our brain health and keeping our minds healthy and strong is certainly one of the things that we most desire, because that makes such a difference in the quality of life and the vibrancy of life. My grandmother, this was my mom's mom, who did not die of Alzheimer's. And I swear one of the things that kept her young was that she had such a curious mind. And even though she didn't have the opportunity to have a lot of formal education, she always had this huge stack of books by her chair. And she was like continually expanding her mind. And she read books on all different kinds of topics. I mean, she was just a voracious reader. And right up until the very end of her life, she stayed very, very quick with her mind, and her brain health was obviously very strong. Now, my mother, I shared with you, passed away from Alzheimer's, and it was a very painful and sad decline, to the point at the end of her life where she didn't even know who I was. And that was very painful and very sad when that happened. You know, we had some moments that were tender and sweet, kind of along the way, but that was a very sad moment. And just one thing, this is just kind of a little side note and kind of a little bit of humor in this very serious topic. One day I was helping her in the bathroom and helping her wash her hands, and we're standing in front of the bathroom mirror, and she's looking at the two of us in the mirror, and she says, "Oh, there's our friends." And I said, "Well, Mom," I said, "that's you and that's me." And she said, "That's not me. I'm a lot prettier than that."
Oh, that is so precious.
So that was just one kind of, a little painful, but also a little bit of humor in what was a challenging and difficult decline.
And I have to agree with you about keeping the mind active. There is a lot of research on that too. And my mother was also a voracious reader, but because she knew the research on brain decline, if you didn't use the brain, she did the crossword puzzles, Sudoku, or whatever that's called, wasn't popular then, but she would always watch Jeopardy. She would always watch If You Want to Be a Millionaire or something, questions, those shows with questions. But they're also finding in the research that one of the other ways to keep the brain young is to do things differently every day. Like, for example, this is crazy, but if you write with your right hand, write with your left hand, because it actually stimulates parts of the brain that you're not using. Okay. Yeah. Doing challenging aerobic exercise where you have to do patterns. Another thing is if you knit, anything that takes that concentration is all supposed to keep the brain active and young and prevent the degradation. But the other thing we said about diet, that if you only do one thing to keep the brain young, I know people are going to be mad at me for this, but you really need to stop eating white refined sugar, because it is the worst offender when it comes to brain inflammation. And brain inflammation is the main cause of your brain atrophying or aging too fast. And white refined sugar and foods that act the same in your system, like refined carbs, like white bread and white pasta, is causing inflammation that slows down communication between neurons. And that's what causes you to feel dull and foggy and, walk into the room and not remember what you came in for. And furthermore, brain inflammation is serious because it means that nerve cells in the brain are dying. So it plays a significant role in Alzheimer's. Mm-hmm. So start using sugar substitutes like stevia or monk fruit or date sugar. Even raw, organic, unprocessed cane sugar does not cause inflammation. But no Splenda, do not go off into NutraSweet, aspartame, because not only are those bad for brain inflammation, they're actually worse. And by the way, the keys that I am sharing today are great to keep your brain young, great to prevent Alzheimer's. And also, even if you're in your 30s, you want to have a clear brain. Brain decline starts at 27. That's when our brain actually reaches its height, and then it's down. So you want to keep the brain young, no matter what your age is. But, a lot of people, I just want to comment on Alzheimer's. A lot of people think that Alzheimer's is hereditary, and it's not. The study of epigenetics is, so you don't have to worry, Michelle, because the study of...
I'm glad you said that.
Right? It's now showing that just because your mom or your grandmother had it doesn't mean you have to have it. They've done studies on twins who were separated and grew up in different environments, one with better options to a healthier lifestyle, and one that, the idea of dinner was, a hamburger and some Skittles. And one developed diseases like Alzheimer's, like their mom did, but the other twin didn't. In fact, research shows that only 5% of Alzheimer's is actually hereditary.
Wow. Well, and inflammation, we've been talking specifically about the brain and Alzheimer's, but inflammation is such a cause of disease in all different parts of the body and all different kinds of conditions, right?
Absolutely, because inflammation in the body leads to heart disease and cancers and arthritis. They're all inflammatory diseases. I'm going to talk about inflammation in the brain. Is that all right?
Sure.
A little bit scientific, okay? And I learned this from Ronnie. So you might not be familiar with how neurons communicate with each other, but it's how we think. And again, I learned this from Ronnie, but what happens is electrical charges travel down our nerve cells in our brain. And they're like, spines. You might remember them. They're called dendritic spines if you were a good student in physiology in high school. And what happens is that when the impulse travels around one dendritic spine, it meets with another, and a chemical is transferred from one brain cell to the other across what's called a synapse. Then the adjacent brain cell uptakes the chemical, and then the next brain cell communicates with the next. And that's how our brain thinks and communicates. The chemical is called a neurotransmitter. However, when you eat inflammatory foods or even stress causes brain inflammation, a hormone called CRH, or corticotrophin releasing hormone, is released into many areas of the brain, and particularly the hippocampus, which is the primary memory and learning center of our brains. And so corticotrophin releasing hormone so you eat like a Twinkie, and it causes your dendritic spine to literally detract. You're really, really stressed. It causes the space between our brain cells to get so large that the cells can't communicate with each other. And that damages our ability to learn new things. So if you're eating a bunch of junk, if you're eating sugar and nitrates, and you're not keeping your stress levels down, then your dendritic spines are going like this. And then it's very hard for them to communicate. So then you have the "what did I come in this room for" syndrome. So that's why when we're stressed, our mind can draw a blank. That's cortisol trophin releasing hormone at work. But here's one good thing. Fortunately, when we start eating healthier foods, when the stress dissipates, then the corticotrophin releasing hormone is metabolized out of our brain and the spines will grow back. That's why in the speaking industry, we always say that whenever we give a speech, we actually give three: the one we write, the one we give, and the one we give in our head when we sit down and we say, I can't believe I forgot to say it. Right. I can't believe I forgot that quote. Okay. But if we are chronically stressed, if we are chronically eating bad food, then it causes these nerve cells to actually die. And that's when we end up getting senile dementia or Alzheimer's. But there are many, many different ways so don't despair if you've been overly stressed, because there are ways to combat that. And there are so many ways no matter how old you are, to create a healthy brain.
Yeah. So I want to ask you a question, Deborah, and I know you'll be able to give some light on this. So for women out there that may not have felt like they've been taking the best care of themselves, maybe during the pandemic and the last couple of years, maybe not exercising, maybe eating junk food or candy bars or whatever, because, what joys could they enjoy in life during some of this? Or people have felt very isolated. And so for people out there that maybe are just kind of starting from a place of, I don't know, I really don't even really know where to start. I haven't been taking that good of care of myself, because we have people at all different places here on the audience. But to make this really tangible for our audience, what are a few things that if we haven't been practicing the very best self-care that we can start with? It can really make a big difference. I mean, I'm hearing the sugar thing. So the sugar thing came through loud and clear. That's one thing that's really important, because that really makes a difference in terms of the inflammation and how our bodies react to the sugar. Right. So in addition to that, for those of us that may feel like, okay, what are just a few tangible things I can take away here that I can really start implementing that can make a big difference for me?
All right. Well, this is my favorite thing to do. I'm going to give you the lightning round of things that you could do.
Okay.
And the first thing is one of the ways that we can oxygenate the brain is through using our breath. So I'm going to teach you a really simple breath exercise that not only oxygenates the brain, but I'm not giving medical advice, but can even normalize blood pressure. I've had so many people tell me that they've been in stressful situations and their blood pressure was through the roof, and they did this very simple breathing exercise, and the doctors couldn't believe that their blood pressure came down, on the spot. Okay. So here's what we're going to do. I want you to close your eyes. Mm. And I want you to breathe in through your nose. And when you breathe out through your mouth, I want you to purse your lips as if you were blowing through a straw. Again, in through your nose. Then slowly out through your lips, remember when you were a little kid and you blew through the straw to make bubbles in your chocolate milk. Again, in through your nose, out through your pursed lips. In through your nose, out through your lips. One more time, in through your nose, out through your lips. And now you could open your eyes. So that's called straw breath. And I can ask you, did you feel?
I absolutely felt like I was letting go of stress and anxiety. It felt like it was just kind of relaxing. And Deborah, I think this is really interesting. Again, we can't make medical claims or anything here, but I do believe breathing is such an important thing to pay attention to. I notice during times of stress or anxiety or fear, and I think we've all experienced some of that in these last couple of years, that sometimes I feel like I'm hardly breathing. It's like so shallow. It's so shallow.
And that's why this straw breath is such a good technique, because when you notice that you're fearful about something or you have some anxiety, you saw 5 straw breaths and we feel completely different, so much more relaxed, so much more centered. And you know what's great about this? You could even do it. Like sometimes I'll be in the line at the grocery store and I'm really in a hurry and it's taking forever. And I'm like getting so tense. I just do a few straw breaths and that brings me right back into the present moment. You could be on a Zoom meeting and people are disagreeing and you're not liking what's going on. You just do a few straw breaths, or even in a board meeting or a meeting when you're in person, few straw breaths, it brings you right back to center. And so that's one thing that people can do. And it also oxygenates the brain for clearer thinking. Exercise. There is now compelling research that's concluded that there are 2 exercise methods that can slow down the aging process better than any others by preventing cellular aging. And you might be surprised to hear what they are. I mean, people always guess yoga, and the answer is no. And you don't have to do this for an hour later today or tomorrow. You could just do this for 10 minutes. And one is actually aerobic exercise, like anything that increases your heartbeat, like speed walking or running or cycling. But another is what's called high intensity interval training, or HIIT, HIIT, which is, you can guess, is high intensity burst of cardio exercise, walk really, 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 really fast for a minute, followed by equal or longer period of slow walking. Okay. Or 30 seconds of sprinting, followed by a minute or 2 of walking or slow jogging. There was actually a study published in the European Heart Journal, and researchers examined the effects of different types of exercise over a 6-month period with a couple hundred participants, and they were told to perform all these different modalities and of exercise. And they found that HIIT increased what's called telomere activity. Telomeres are these nucleotide sequences found at the end of our chromosomes. And when they shorten, aging occurs. And HIIT and endurance training were the only modalities that were found to increase telomere length. So it produced an anti-aging effect.
Yeah, it's very fascinating. And I've heard something about that. I haven't researched it in depth, but I think that's really fascinating. And of course, everyone has to be wise about, if you haven't been exercising at all, you have to be wise about this. And you may want to check with your doctor depending on your medical situation. But I do believe that exercising, and like you said, you don't have to do it for hours and hours and hours a day. In fact, you said that was something that could potentially cause aging or cause so much stress on the body. But consistent exercise, I've always been taught what's good for the heart, you're getting your heart rate up, is also good for the brain. And I think part of it is the oxygen and the breathing that goes along with exercising. Because so often, I know for myself, I can be a shallow breather. But when I'm exercising and I'm getting my heart rate up, then I'm also getting more oxygen because I'm breathing more.
Exactly right. And when you strengthen your heart, it's not only good for longevity, but like you say, it brings circulation to the brain, it brings circulation to the extremities, and it's absolutely essential, regular exercise for overall health. But you know what? Vigorously cleaning your house is exercise, just as long as you get your heart pumping. We need to do that. Again, like you say, you could check with your doctor, but get your heart pumping, even if it's just walking really fast for 20 minutes a day or 20 minutes 5 days a week. It will dramatically increase your health and longevity and your radiance. When you look healthy, that's fueling your feminine fire. that healthy radiance that we all want, you can have that if you do some exercise. And of course, we want to strengthen our bones by resistance exercise. We want to stretch, yoga, Nia exercise, dance exercise. I love that. But what they found in terms of lengthening telomeres, it was that high intensity interval training or getting the heart pumping. So I want to give people a tip on sleep. And then I'm going to give you a tip that's going to blow your mind. But sleep,
all right.
Okay. We all know that we need enough sleep, but what people don't know is that when you sleep is equally or more important than how long you sleep. So what do I mean by that? In our sleep, we produce HGH, human growth hormone. It's the anti-aging hormone. And we need human growth hormone. It's involved in brain function, mood, aerobic endurance, immunity. It increases your skin elasticity. It stimulates fat burning. It does so many things, increases muscle mass and increases bone density. So we need HGH. And HGH is abundant in your youth, and it does decline with age. So you want to do whatever you can to maximize its production. The good news is that you can increase your production of HGH by a factor of 5-fold, depending on your sleep habit. So,
wow, 5-fold.
5-fold. So if I asked you, is it better to get 7 hours of sleep between 10 and 5 or 9 hours between midnight and 9? What would you say?
Well, I'm cheating because we've talked about this before, so I know it's 10 and 5. It's
right, because it's 7 hours.
I had a sneak preview on that one.
Okay, so it is 7 hours between 10 and 5, because we still are subject to what's called circadian rhythms, and our bodies are still tuned to going to sleep when the sun goes down, before there was the electric light bulb, and
right.
waking up when the sun comes up. So when the sun goes down, our bodies start increasing the production of HGH because it's produced in our sleep. And depending on, the season, we start really producing a lot of HGH at about 10 o'clock. It peaks at midnight, and by 2 o'clock, 2 a.m., there is no more HGH being produced. So people who go to bed at 2 o'clock, sorry guys, you are getting like very minuscule amounts of HGH. So you want to go to sleep the earlier the better if you want to tap into the most abundant access to, or the access to most abundant amounts of human growth hormone.
So kind of follow the patterns of the sunlight.
Exactly right. Exactly right. So if the sun goes down at 6 and then it comes up at 4, so right there in the middle is the where you have peak HGH. And I have one more, and this is going to blow people's minds because most people don't know the secret to turning back the hands of time and preventing aging. So what do you think science is saying is one of the most insidious causes of aging of the skin and damage to our eyes? Did I tell you this one already?
I don't know this one. No, I don't know this one.
What it is the blue light that emits from our computer screens. And it's in addition to the electromagnetic fields, which are a topic for another day. But that light that comes off of our screens or our devices is called blue light. And it's known to have long-term health effects. Even the health letter of the Harvard Medical School said a year ago, July, I'm quoting it pretty much exactly, that blue light can affect your sleep. It can potentially cause disease, even cancer, diabetes, heart disease, obesity. And studies also say that continued exposure to blue light over time could lead to damage of the retinal cells and eventually to vision problems like age-related macular degeneration and even blindness. And blue light exposure is of particular concern for our children, especially the real little ones, because their developing eyes absorb more blue light than adults, putting them at greater risk of long-term damage to their eyes. In fact, some researchers say that macular degeneration and blindness are going to be the biggest health crisis when our kids who learn at home in front of the computers, especially during COVID, who spend hours and hours a day exposing their tender eyes to blue light. When they become adults, they say it's going to be the biggest health crisis of the generation. So, and by the way, some other potential diseases associated with blue light are headaches and suppression of melatonin. And according to the Harvard Health Letter, also cancer and diabetes and obesity. So, but that's the bad news. Here's the good news. And I'm going to talk about the skin in a minute. But wearing blue blocker glasses is one of the ways to protect your eyes from blue light. But for your children who probably will not wear glasses, you want to put a blue light blocking screen on your computer. I have a blue light, I use both. I have a blue light blocking screen for my skin. And then I also use blue light blocking glasses for my eyes, even though I have it, I'm like double protecting my eyes. Because the other thing is that blue light has been shown to age the skin. So believe it or not, if you're not going to put a blue light blocking screen onto your computer, you should wear a sunscreen if you are in front of the computer for long stretches of time. I actually pulled up a quote. I knew I was going to tell you this. So this is a quote from dermatologist Stephanie Williams. This was in Bazaar magazine. She said, "We are now seeing increasing data on the potential long-term harm of blue light on our skin. Our digital devices are swiftly being labeled the silent agers of our generation." And then Dr. Murad, the dermatologist, right? He said, quote, listen to this one, "Spending 4 8-hour workdays in front of a computer exposes you to the same amount of sun energy as 20 minutes in a strong midday sun at the equator. Nobody would go out at noon at the equator with the sun shining and lie there for 20 minutes. The free radical damage to your skin is just immeasurable. Yet at the same time, 4 8-hour days just sitting at your computer does the same amount of skin damage. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that you get a screen protector. And then if you want to protect your eyes, additionally, your blue blocker glasses.
Wow. And so that applies not only to our computers, but to our phones and everything too, right?
Absolutely. When I learned about this, every single one of my kids and my godkids and they all, what they got for the holidays, protectors for their computers and protectors for their phones. I'm not, especially the little ones, and they're on the phone and they're on their little computers. There are so many good companies. There's OcuShield and iJust. Those are my favorite companies, but there are a bunch of good companies where you could get high quality glasses and high quality screen protectors.
Yeah. Those are all really, really good tips. And I really appreciate you sharing them. And I think this last one may not be one that a lot of people have thought about or know a lot about. And I think that's really important. I was just thinking of myself. I know I spend so much time because of the kind of work that I do, doing Zoom calls with clients, doing interviews like this. I mean, I'm in front of the computer all the time. And so that's a really, really important thing to know.
And again, I know we're not going to go into, we've covered so much today, but you also want to protect yourself from electromagnetic fields that have also been linked to, health situations. So, get some protection on your phone. You could just Google EMF Harmonized is a good company to get protectors for your computer so that they don't emit radiation to the point that it's affecting your health.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for adding that. This is a little bit off topic from what we've been talking about, but I think you're such a great example of this that I would love for you to share a little bit. How do you think having a passion or having something that you're really passionate about in your life, in terms of your life work or in terms of your life mission, makes a difference in your radiance as you age?
Well, I think that you could tell the difference between somebody who has a passion and somebody who doesn't. But I think where people go wrong is that they think that passion has to be something with a capital P, that they have to want to write a best-selling book, or they have to want to, be on the cover of Time magazine, or they have to. No, what you have to do is follow your heart. Do what makes your heart sing. You know this story about me, Michelle. I was at the top of my game. My book was about to be published by a top New York publishing house. I was about to have my own daytime TV talk show, talk about passion. And then I had my daughter. And I switched my passion and I gave up my work for 21 years. I was a stay-at-home mom with my daughter and then her brother, who was born 3 years later. And people are like, oh, you gave up a TV show and to be at home. Yeah, because that's what made me happy when I got up in the morning and, to take him to Chuck E. Cheese. That's what made me happy. That's what gave me Ageless Radiance. That's what fueled my feminine fire. And also, we were each put on earth for a purpose. And I didn't give up anything. I knew that I know I'm a speaker. I know that I'm a teacher. And I know that that's not going to go away if I take out 18 years or 21 years to be home with the kids. Or if you take out a year to be with your mom as she's making her transition, like you did with your mom, being so loving to her. Or if you take off a year to go hold AIDS babies in Uganda, or, help build clean water wells for people and wherever. As long as it's what makes your heart sing. Maybe what makes your heart sing, maybe you're retired and you're feeling guilty that you're, not doing something great. What's great is doing what makes your heart sing. Because when you do what makes your heart sing, then you spread happiness to the environment. And right now on this planet, we need happy energy to counteract the dense energy that is being emitted in so many places. You want to help places who are at war, places where they're affected by natural disasters and you feel so helpless. Increase your happiness quotient. Maybe what makes your heart sing is to go out and work in your garden. Do it. And don't let anybody else tell you that that's not big enough. Because when you grow those flowers and you bring them to the neighbors, or a bunch of zucchini and green beans, and you put it in a box and say free zucchini, whatever makes you happy, that's how you're contributing to the world. So, and don't let anybody tell you otherwise. And if you're thinking of something that you want to do, that you're really excited about, I say, be careful with whom you share your cherished goals. You don't want to share your cherished goals with the discouragement committee, those people who are going to say, right? They're
right.
You say, well, my passion is I want to, end world hunger. And they're like, oh, come on, get realistic. But you know what? I've had friends who their goal is to end world hunger. And as soon as they set that intention, the next day, somebody says to them, I'm working on this new project and it's this hydroponic such and such that is going to end world hunger. And we're looking for volunteers. Like, how did that happen? Right?
Right.
But don't be careful with who you share your cherished goals, and but write them down and keep them inside your heart, and know that whatever makes you happy, that is a worthy goal.
Oh, I love that. And I love that you shared that it doesn't have to be something that's going to put you in the limelight or make you famous or make you wealthy. It's what makes you happy. What makes you happy? What makes your heart sing?
I have seen so many people, I tend to hang around with a lot of people who are wealthy and famous and And a lot of them are great and wonderful. A lot of them are kind of in despair because they went for the dollars and now they're looking back on their lives and they didn't spend time with their children or they didn't whatever. But you know what? It doesn't matter. Don't spend your time agonizing over, oh, you stayed home with your kids. Not everybody's meant to stay home with their kids. I know great kids who both of their parents worked and kids love to see their moms and their dads achieving. So don't feel like you had to be a mom at home. But if you feel like, oh, I miss spending time with children, there are a lot of children who need big brothers, big sisters in that program or tutoring. I used to tutor kids that never ever. These are high school kids, never had anyone help them with their homework. There are so many ways that you can contribute and that makes it feel really good inside your heart when you come home. So again, there are so many ways. Just don't agonize over the past. Today is today. You have the rest of your life ahead of you, no matter how old you are. Just go out and do what makes your heart sing.
So beautiful. That's so beautiful. I'm so glad that you shared that. And I really wanted to ask you that question because I know you've had this impressive career. And I also knew that you took that time to be a mom, to be a stay-at-home mom with your kids. And you changed your trajectory for a period of time. And yet you always have this heart of a teacher and wanting to help people and support people. And so I just think that's beautiful. And I think that as women, well, as people, we can have seasons in our life. We can have seasons for different things. And I think part of the beauty of life is really enjoying and appreciating each season. If the last couple of years have taught us something, and hopefully it's taught us many things, but one thing I think is that, the value and the preciousness of our time and of our lives, because, things can change dramatically, individually or globally in what feels like a split second.
Yeah, it's so true. And, you mentioned people going after the next shiny object. And again, I know people who have their beautiful home and their Tesla in the driveway, but unless you do the inner work, unless you do what makes you happy and in giving, do you know that doing random acts of kindness actually increases oxytocin, which is the feel-good hormone. It's the happiness hormone. So if you're feeling depressed right now, if you're feeling like the last 2 years have been really not happy years, go out and volunteer or just, bake a birthday cake for the guy who lives next door, whose family is 1,000 miles away and nobody's there to bake him a birthday cake. It's found that when you do those random acts of kindness, that it not only increases the oxytocin, it actually decreases the cortisol, which is the stress hormone. So again, it's all a matter of choice. It also is anti-aging. So it's all a matter of choice. But I'm telling you, if you don't do that kind of inner work, you can get the new house and the nice car, but you open that door to that beautiful house and it'll be like one of those fake movie sets. You walk in and you still feel empty because it's not going to fill the emptiness inside. But if you do these random acts of kindness, if you give, and this is actually interesting. Just thinking about doing a random act of kindness increases your oxytocin. Watching people doing random acts of kindness increases your oxytocin. So I would say watch those TV shows that are uplifting and don't watch those TV shows. You want to stay informed about what's going on in the world, but don't watch too much of it because it decreases your oxytocin. It increases your stress hormone. So just enough to be informed. And but in the meantime, just use your time instead to visualize a world at peace. Use your time instead to send love and light and to these places on earth that are in conflict. And that will do a lot more, and it will be a more precious use of your time than watching the news and you feeling sunk and you radiating fear and you radiating hopelessness. There's a quote from St. Thomas Aquinas. it's something, it says despair. I can't remember. While something is the worst of sins, despair is the most dangerous. Okay. And because when you're in despair, then you're inert, then you can't do anything for the planet. So don't intentionally do things that put you in a state of despair, like watching the news all day long.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And for me, if I watch the news all day long, I can't sleep either, because my mind is thinking about that and can't turn that off.
Right. So when you're feeling that contraction, maybe turn it off and then just use that time to radiate love and light and good wishes and pray for those people whose lives are in danger, whose lives are not great right now.
We're so grateful, Debra, for all that you've shared with us, and your generosity and your presence and your radiance.
Well, thank you, Michelle. And likewise, I love your work, and thank you for everything that you do for the planet, for all the women and the men who love them.
That's right. That's right. And Debra and I also want to thank all of you for joining us. We know you have lots of options with what you do with your time, so we're honored that you've chosen to spend some time with us, and we hope you'll join us for more. Thank you, Debra, and thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye for now.